Thank you for joining for this webinar on cyanotypes. Thank you, Texas Studios, for hosting it, and Augustina for all of your help on setting this up. So cyanotypes, what are they? They're this really lovely blue process that is a photo-based process because it's light sensitive. But the good thing is you can work in the sun and you don't need a dark room. And so here's, I've been making these books lately, and so these are these little cyanotype accordion books here. And then here's one that's, and I'm also a bookbinder. I teach bookbinding also, and then here's one that I use. This is actually a mistake, so I didn't make it to a book, so I made it into a journal for myself. Here's one that is done from a negative. And so the ones I've shown you before are photograms, but you can also make from a negative as well. So before I talk a little bit more about that, just to give you an idea, the way this works is you have paper that you're going to coat with a light sensitive material. And so I'll show you all those steps, but we'll coat the paper and it'll be kind of yellowish, greenish. And then you place an object on the paper and then you would go out in the sun. And so in this, where the light can hit the paper, it's going to react with the chemicals and turn it blue. And whatever is blocked is going to stay white. And so this flower was here and it blocked the light and it made that shadow of the flower stay white. Just to show you a few more, one thing that's nice about cyanotypes is you're coating your paper, and so you can make your paper solid. So this was a blue sheet of paper, so instead of it turning white where the object was, it stayed light blue. But you can coat your paper solid, or you can show brush strokes. So here's two that really old work, these two, but these were both from using a 4x5 negative, these nude studies, but I have these really messy brush strokes so that I can see how I've painted the chemical on. And then both of these I've gone back in with pencil or watercolor and added pinks, I think pinks to both of these. So you're working on your own, your own selection of paper. So if you use a watercolor, you can add back in. So first, the chemistry. So you just have to buy two chemicals. So it's pretty simple. And we have ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferrocyanide. I'm going to show you mixing from bulk, only one, so it doesn't take up much time. But you can also order pre-mixed kits that are weighed out. That box, Augustina is uploading a PDF of suppliers, so I've included this PDF, and it has the link for where you can buy a pre-measured kit from Photographer's Formulary and also one from Bostic & Sullivan. And then it has information for Paper Arts, which is a great supplier. I'll talk about in a minute. So the pre-mixed kits, this is the one from Photographer's Formulary, and it'll come with your chemicals already weighed out, so you just have to add the water, and then the one from Bostic & Sullivan. Okay, so you need to order your chemistry, and then the next thing you're going to think about is your paper, or whatever medium you're going to use. I use this Stratford watercolor paper for large pieces. It's a really nice watercolor paper. Your medium that you choose, it just needs to hold up. You need to be sure that it can hold up to about 10 minutes of water washing. And then the other thing is it needs to be able to absorb the chemical. So you can't use like glass. You can use cloth. I don't have an example with me here, but cloth is great because once you wash this, it's a permanent chemical, and so the cyanotype will stay. So you can make your own masks. You can all make cyanotype masks. Right now, I'm doing a project with this really beautiful Oriental paper, and it's kind of hard to see, but it has grains, paper grains in it, and this is what all of my accordion books are on right now. I was running into a little bit of a problem with this paper because the first paper I bought fell apart in the water, so I went to Paper Arts, and Terry, she's amazing. She knows all about paper. So I took her my paper. She said, no, that won't work. And she knew immediately why. And so she gave me, she found this paper and she helped me out. Here's one that's on a cold press watercolor. And so the texture is going to show. So be aware of that. If you don't want texture, you'd like a hot press. So a hot press watercolor is really smooth and it's not going to have any of this texture. This is a really rough watercolor, and then when you look close you can see the texture, and then that also makes details not as sharp because it's the image is going in and out of the texture. So just think about your paper, you know, as you're putting your supplies together. Okay, so first to mix the chemistry. So you're going to need light type bottles to hold your chemistry in. And if you don't have light type bottles, Oak Cliff Brewery, since they can't refill your growlers right now, they're selling their beers in these liters and they're light type. So you can go pick up a beer and order, while you're doing your ordering, drink your beer, and then you have your light type bottles. So it's great. Yay, Texas Brewery. And they're right next to Texas Studios. Okay, so also one of the PDFs that's been uploaded is step-by-step guide. Your step-by-step guide is pretty detailed, so don't get confused by reading it all. At the very end, I listed really the steps kind of simplified out. Okay, so mixing your chemistry, it's rather easy. Be sure you wear gloves because the chemistry can stain. And also, when I mix, I wear a respirator just because I'm working with dry chemistry. But I would sound like Darth Vader, so I'm not going to do that today. Again, if you buy the kits, you step. Okay, so I'm going to mix B. I've already mixed up my A. And if you look on your step-by-step guide, it's rather simple. I just measure the chemical and then I just add water. So there's just these two parts. So I have a gram scale. This is just a kitchen scale. And then I just need to be sure it went on grams. And then I have little Tupperwares that I've labeled as chemistry, so I know not to use food in them. And then I'm going to tear out my scale. For this one, for part B, for potassium ferrocyanide, it's 8 grams. So I'll measure 8 grams. And then it's just 100 milliliters of water. So you can use distilled water. I've used tap water and it's been just fine. But I have bottled water here to use today. And I think I have to find my glasses. Voila, I have my chemistry. That's how easy it is. So I've traveled internationally before and brought dry chemistry with me, already measured out, knowing that I just needed like 8 ounces of water, so I could just buy a water bottle and mix part A and mix part B. And so when I travel, I tend to do cyanotypes when I'm traveling. So I've mixed my dry powdered chemistry, and I now have solutions A and B. They are not light sensitive yet. So you can go outside with these, you can store them, you can travel. They don't become light sensitive until I actually mix A and B together. Okay, and really that's the most difficult part of this whole process is weighing this out and mixing them. It's a super easy process. So the next is to coat my paper. So when I work in my dark room, I work on cardboard trays. Just it's really nice because I can carry things around on this tray, and so I just have a bunch of cardboard trays that I use kind of as pallets or something. Okay, mixing. Equal parts. That's how simple it is. So I'm going to mix equal parts. I have shot glasses to use, but you could even use something like this as the cap for my shaving cream, and I just put a little mark with Sharpie. I could use that. So when I travel, I could use anything. You just need equal parts, so it doesn't have to be a precise measurement. That's why this process is pretty nice and easy to work with, away from a darkroom. So here's A. I'll measure out 1 tablespoon. And then here's B. And I'll measure out 1 tablespoon. Now this step should be under tungsten light. So once I mix them, they're light sensitive to sunlight. So at this point, I should go to my dark room, or I should be in a dark room with all the windows closed and under tungsten light. But y'all wouldn't be able to see me if I moved all this into my dark room. So I'm just going to do these examples under daylight. But what you can do is you can mix your chemistry anytime, and it's going to store for a few months, and then you can coat at night. That way you don't have to have a dark room and there's no daylight, so just turn on a tungsten lamp. A dim lamp will work, but this chemistry is not sensitive to tungsten. So just go ahead and coat at night, which works really good because then your paper's drying all night, and then the next morning you can start working because you need the sunlight to expose. Okay, so equal parts. I'm just going to mix them here. And then my brushes. So you have a choice in what you'd like for your brushes. So I'm going to start with this really cheap painter's brush, just to see what it's going to do. And so, oh look, that's kind of cool. I'm kind of like making these, I'll show you, these really lines. Sort of looks like a wing. And so these little, wherever the yellow is what can turn blue, and wherever it's white, it's going to stay your paper. And so maybe I could, I might want to put a photograph, a negative here, or a flower, and have look print. I could use a watercolor brush. This is a really nice one. It could. What I use are sponge brushes. These are super cheap. As soon as it falls apart, I throw it away. I actually don't buy the really expensive, nice brushes that a lot of people buy for all processes. I do a lot of Cyanotype, and I think sponge brushes work really good. If you want a smooth, constant sheet, then the way you want to do that is you want to coat one direction. And I can see, which is, in tungsten light, you can't see that well, but my coating's not that even, which is fine because then I coat the other direction. And since I'm working on this tray, it's okay if I coat all the way to the end. So I'm going to coat horizontal and then coat vertical. And then you want to make sure there's no puddles. So I'm going to pull this up and let the drips drop off into my container here. You actually just want a nice even coat. Puddling, if you can tell, up here at the top, you see where it's white? That's because it's puddled. These prints are like 20 years old, and I didn't know at the time to not let my chemistry puddle, and when it puddles, it won't let the light get through. So always double check and make sure that you've dripped off any extra chemistry. And then if you're doing something like that, organic, that Oriental paper I'm using, it absorbs a lot of cyanotype right now. And so I'm coating and coating. And then next thing is always make a test strip. So I'm going to have my paper that's for my final, and then from the same paper, I want to coat a test strip. So because I don't know how long my exposure needs to be in the sun, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this test strip to figure out my times. Okay, so here I have my paper coated, one with really nice messy edges, one that's a solid sheet, and one that is a test strip. So now these need to dry. So I would go put them in a closet. And it needs to be light tight while it's drying. If you use a blow dryer, it's written on that step-by-step sheet, just be sure that heating it on high. Okay, so then my paper is dry. Look at that, it's magic. So now I have my dry paper, and I'm still working under tungsten light. Okay, so once you have your chemistry mixed, you're under tungsten light until you're ready to expose in the sun. So I need to make a test strip. So some way I have to hold down my object. If I'm going to use this flower, I have to hold down my object outside in the sun. This is a contact printing frame. This is a hinge back one. It's really nice, and it just will let me sandwich my objects and my paper in here. These are rather pricey. That's why I only have a little bitty one. When I teach kids, we use a sheet of plexiglass and a piece of cardboard, and then we just clip everything down. So that way, if it breaks, it's okay. The other thing is just to use a frame. So I have a whole bunch of these cheap frames from Hobby Lobby. They work great. Okay, so I'm going to place down my objects that I'm going to use. So I have these buttercups and these wild onions. And then I have some speargrass. So I'm placing that down on my glass. And then I'm going to place my cyanotype, the yellow side, facing, so it'll face the sun. Okay, so I see the back side. And then I'm going to close my frame. And then I would go out in the sun. So can you see that I have glass, objects, and then the next is the paper with the yellow side facing towards what would be the sun. So now I'm going to walk this outside into the sun. And then I just need something to block the light. So I have a piece of mat board here. You could use a book, that would work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover everything except for a couple inches of my paper and expose it to 5 minutes. So I would walk outside in the sun, I would leave this here, and I would wait for 5 minutes. And then I would move this down and wait for 5 more minutes. And then I'd move this all the way and wait 5 more minutes. And so what's happening is I'm exposing it to light for 5 minutes, and then this is going to end up being 10 minutes, and this will end up being 15 minutes. So I'm going to have what's called a test strip exposure. So I go out in the sun, make that. And then it's going to end up looking like this. So this is my test strip that has been, I'm sorry, I was trying to read y'all's chats. The computer's kind of far away, so I can't see it. So what I'll do is at the end is I'll move the computer and put it on this table so I can ask questions, and I'll try to read through the chats then. So I hope that works for you guys. Unfortunately, it's not a normal class, and you can just read your hand. Okay, so this has been, this was out in the sun. I did this yesterday. Okay, so after the sun, I'm going to come back inside. So, and then I'm just going to open this, and I'm going to wash it. So it looks like this. And I have these like wash buckets. I'm just gonna add water. And what you're gonna doing is add water, slosh it around, pour it out, add water, slosh it around, pour it out. And if y'all can tell, which you can't, the water is starting to get yellow. So you want to keep washing this until the water's not yellow anymore. So I fill this up, the water's yellow, dump it out, add more, flush it around, dump it out, add more. And it's going to take 5 minutes or a little longer to do this. And then after the water's clear, the last step, which is optional, is I'm going to add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. And so I'm going to hold this up so y'all can see. Hopefully this will work this way. But the hydrogen peroxide will make it a darker blue. See how this side doesn't have hydrogen peroxide, this side does. So you just, like I normally just do a little squirt in my, and then I need to keep washing this because the water's still yellow. So after I'm done washing it, I then need to let it dry. You want to read from a dry test strip. And so this is one that I made yesterday. And so this is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 and 20. And the blues look pretty constant, pretty continuous. But what happens with the longer exposure is it's starting to turn more of a light blue, like where the flowers are kind of thinner and light can start to get through the petals. And so from this test strip, I decided I should make an exposure for 20 minutes. So now I would set up my final print. So my test strip, I didn't have my objects lined up to what the final print was going to look like. So now I'm going to put speargrass, my flower, a dandelion. I'll put all these objects onto my frame. And then I'll take my coated paper. And it's best if you did this part under tungsten light, because right now, being in this light, it's exposed. Then I'm going to sandwich this down. Okay, and then I would take this outside, and I'm just going to leave it there for 20 minutes. When you take this outside, you want full sun. So don't leave it inside by a window, because the window will diffuse the light and it's not so strong. Also, don't put it in the shade. The other thing is by 4 p.m., the light's getting pretty soft. So if you tested under light that was like noon, then you need to print under light that's noon. So I try to do all my work between 11 a.m. and about 3 p.m. I can push it to 4 p.m., but really the light's pretty strong and pretty constant from 11 a.m., maybe even 10:30, but 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. is when I try to do my work. And I set it outside on my picnic table, full sun. Okay, so it exposed for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I bring it inside. It's going to look like this. And then I'm going to wash it. Like that. So I can't even see much of an image right now. So again, I'm just filling it up with water. The water's yellow. I dump it out. Fill it up, dump it out. And I'm going to keep doing that until the water's clear. And then after it's clear, I'm going to dry it. And I dry, I mean, you can just lay it out to dry, but this thin paper that I use, it's really fragile when it's wet. So I've started to hang everything on these hangers with clothespins. And I just hang this from my shower curtain rod, or I hang it outside for it to dry. And so this kind of device works really well for hanging the prints up. Okay, and then after it's dry, I have my final piece. Okay, I'm going to move the computer so I can answer questions. Okay, so hello, you guys. So I have you're welcome, Sean. Hey, Sean. Hey, Manuel. Hey, Doug. So I have the chat box open. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask questions. Hey, Virginia. Okay, so you're all ready to make cyanotypes? Oh, thank you. So you guys, Sean said about obtaining chemistry. I just had to reorder more chemistry from Photographer's Formulary, and they got it to me in 3 days. So some of my students were asking about it, and they were worried how long if chemistry is being shipped, but it is being shipped, and they got to me in 3 days. And then feel free to call people also. So yes. So Manuel asked a great question. Okay, storing everything. I didn't go over that. When I mix my bulk chemistry, my A and my B, I try to use it immediately. But it's good for probably a couple months. One of them grows mold. So just check, and if you see mold, strain the mold out, and then it's still good. Once you mix the A and B, use it that day. So I only try to mix exactly what I'm going to use. Okay. Once you coat your paper, I plan on coating my paper at night, printing the next day. So I try to immediately work on it. I have had some paper, the longest is probably 2 months, and that I've waited, and some of the paper looked good, and some of it sort of fogged and turned kind of blue, which ended up looking pretty. But try to use it, your paper, once it's coated, I would try to use it within a week, a month at least. So besides flowers and plants, it's really nice is cloth. Like lace is really beautiful. Objects that are glass are really pretty because the light can go through the glass and make different shapes. Jewelry's nice. Gosh, like little chains, they're really pretty because they're really delicate. Ribbon's pretty. You can use negatives. So it's just 35 millimeters, kind of, it's hard to find. You can also print digital negatives, and Pictorico is a really good transparency paper to print on. Right now, if it's hard to get Pictorico, you can just go to office supply store and print a normal transparency sheet. Hey, Lauren. Yes. So it's permanent. So if you print on cloth, wash it before you wear it. But yes, it'll stay. So you can all make your own masks. But yeah, I had one student when I taught at Tarrant County College. He sewed a coat. He made a full coat, all the pieces. He did cyanotypes, and he sewed himself a full coat of cyanotype. It was pretty cool. Hey, Diane Smith. Yes, the paper, it completely stops the exposure because you've washed out all the chemistry. So it won't, it does get a little darker in time. That's why we add the hydrogen peroxide. The hydrogen peroxide makes the oxidation process work a little faster. So if you do that oxidation, the hydrogen peroxide bath, then you'll know what the final color is going to be. And I don't know how long it takes before it fades, but I don't think it'll get any darker. So, but I'm sure over multiple, I don't know, I'm guessing over multiple machine washes, it might get a little. We should all make our own masks and report back. Huh. Yes, he was an awesome student. Thank you, Manuel. And just because I went over everything pretty fast, just to refresh, I hope it made sense that your chemistry is only light sensitive when it's mixed. So A and B is not light sensitive separate. When you mix it, be under tungsten light. Coat your paper under tungsten light. Store it in as dark a place as possible. So store it in a box and put it in a closet, something like that. And then when you put your paper with the objects in the frame, it's best if you kind of arrange that, get it arranged inside under tungsten light, and then you walk it outside and set it in the sun. Okay, any other questions? If I doubt the Oak Cliff studio tours will be happening this year, but last year, actually the last 2 years in a row, I had everybody make cyanotypes. So If it doesn't happen this year, then maybe next year, and y'all can all visit my home studio and make cyanotypes. So Manuel came, he made a great cyanotype. Yes, so I don't know if you all can see everybody's questions, but Diane asked to use a negative. Um, if you want a positive to show, you'd use Pictorico. Correct. So it makes, to make an image that's a positive, this was made from a 4x5 negative. And so you can print a digital negative on Pictorico. It's those of you that don't know Pictorico, it's just a really good transparency sheet that can hold up, it can make a really dense black. Before we had Pictorico, the problem with transparency sheets is they weren't making a thick enough, you couldn't build up the ink really thick. So we'd have to make transparency sheets out of red because red would block more light than black. And so, right, so you can make a digital negative and make it a negative. Don't make it a positive. Make it a negative on Pictorico, print it, and then you can make a print, Cyanotype print. Yeah. You're welcome. Oh, Augustina, thank you so much for putting up these links. That's so helpful. And if any of you have not been to Texas Studios, once social distancing is over, you guys need to go visit. So I know some of you don't live down here in Oak Cliff that are on this chat, and you would like it. It's a really beautiful space, you guys. Oh, one other thing is you can tone cyanotype. I haven't done much toning, but a quick Google search, you can find different toners, and there's ways to turn your cyanotypes into purple tone, black toned, brown toned, so you're not just stuck to blue. Um, I I'm using blue because I'm referencing when a botanist, Anna Atkins, did cyanotypes, and she recorded plants. And since I'm recording plants, I want it to be as traditional as possible. But you can tone your cyanotype. It's just different chemicals that you add to the bath. Thank you, Virginia. Well, you guys, I think this webinar was, thank you, was supposed to be between 30 minutes plus. So if there's no other questions, I'll let everybody order chemistry and go get a beer so you can have your light sensitive bottle. And enjoy this beautiful day. Today is actually a beautiful day to be outside. And that's actually how I did this body of work is I was skipping school and stayed on my patio all day during the springtime and figured out how to make work without going into a dark room when it was beautiful. So that's when I was a student. It's good to see you, Diana. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, that was a thank you to you, Augustina, for putting up a Clippery. And thank you, Sean. Okay, well, I am going to check out. I have no idea how to do that.